For updates from Beneath TV, do press the bell icon and subscribe to our channel.
Yeah, like as I mentioned, it was literally an idea in the middle of the night, and that curiosity kept building on me, and I decided to chase it because I didn't know anybody who was visually impaired or didn't have any impact. Or, a lot of people ask me, oh, was it some incident that inspired you? But it was nothing of that sort. It was born out of curiosity, and that's how it was built on. Both the times I got rejected. So if you have a similar title, it gets rejected immediately. And each process, mind you, takes about 1.5 to 2 months. So I literally had 8 months that went by. After you get the title, you get 3 exact months to come up with the magazine. While doing all the research, what we realized was that the visually impaired community was really tired and sick of being sympathized with.
Right.
So that is what made our decision. Like, we decided we are not going to make Whiteprint a charity venture. We will definitely make it a for profit company. It's a magazine. Even a magazine for a site, it has ads. That is what the route that we were going to approach. And we did that. I wrote to about, I remember, about 200 corporates, different, just found out email IDs from different online and company websites, played around with combinations of name dot surname, and wrote to a lot of people. And finally, we had Raymond Group reply to us. For the first ever edition, they came up with an ad, and they were really impressed with the thought, and it was something that nobody had done before. I was writing to marketing department. So first I was writing to the lower rung. Then I realized that it's not in the capacity of the lower rung to take these decisions, because it was as you know, marketing is all about return on investment, and this was not a concept that would give them that. So I decided that I had to write to the higher ups. That's when I started writing to CMOs, and even CEOs at times. So the Raymond ad also came from the CMO himself, and then I started talking to more companies, because I finally had the first 30,000 rupees to start the magazine at the first place. Once that happened, the media really played an important role, because I just sent out my 1 year of work experience that I have before I started the venture was with a PR company, and I used that to my advantage. And I just sent out a press release to everybody. I didn't know whether they're going to take it, but they found it an interesting story. And that week, I remember every day one main line was doing a story for us. Here's India's first lifestyle magazine in Braille that's out, and that really helped us, because here is a company that had no funds for marketing, no funds for advertising, and we were completely running on luck and trying our best to use word of mouth, and social media. Instagram was not that popular back then, and Facebook was the only place where we could really start talking to people. But media really played an important role for me, because after that, when I started writing to companies, there was legitimacy, because the media had written about us, that here's India's first magazine in real. And people wanted to talk. So I got a couple of meetings, I got easy conversations happening. And then I started writing to the higher ups, because I remember writing to Mr. Ratan Tata when I wanted an ad from the Tata Group. And I wrote to him, he responded, and we actually had them advertise with us for 6 months after that. So that was a strategy I used, just writing and bombarding emails to people, and hoping that one of them out of the 100 that I write in a week get notice, and we get an ad for the magazine. So yeah. I didn't have any experience working in a media house or a publishing house or any of that sort before this. It was just 1 year of PR experience that I had. But apart from that, I was really fresh out of college. So, to be very honest, I've always been a person, and that trend has continued in the company ever since I started. If I put my eye on something, I will, make sure it happens. Like, I am a believer that an idea comes to you or something comes to you only because you're chosen to be doing that. For white print, it was honestly just a belief that I wanted to do something that came to my mind that night. And I honestly didn't have any experience that I have put into it. So, what I always say is that it's helped me learn, make mistakes, and then improvise on that. That has primarily been the whole idea. So yeah, there is open braille, which is the basic level which you're taught when you start learning braille. Then there is contracted braille. So the magazine is done in contracted braille. Basically, contracted braille helps faster reading of and takes lesser space in braille. For to give you an example, one page on Word will be about 2 pages in contracted braille, for English braille, is what I'm talking about. It is tough. Why it's tough for a sighted person is because we are so dependent and overly dependent on our sight that you will start reading with your sight. But like, for instance, I know A is 1 dot, B is 2 dots on the, so I know all of those things, but my touch isn't that strong because I'm not used to it, by a certain section of people. They use braille to consume content. If as a sighted person, my responsibility is to convey, or as an activist, my responsibility is to convey to a corporate or convey to anyone who's, for instance, an author, that, hey, listen, I don't need you to know braille, but I need you to understand that you need to create the content in another format as well, because here's a community that only consumes content in braille, wants to learn, for instance, how we are encouraged to learn new languages. So I would encourage someone to learn a new script, but it's not binding on somebody, to say, oh, you must know Braille. Not at all. There are so many visually impaired people who don't read Braille. There are those kinds also, and that there's a reason for that. There is a reason that there are no books in there are no books in our country. There's study material is scarce. If you need to buy a braille book, you only need to go to a center that works for your community. You can't walk into a regular bookstore and get books. So we're not an inclusive society. That is the problem. you know that, like, we had authors who've come to us and said, I want to come up, I want to do a braille book as well. I said, yes, definitely. And they read about white print and then they want to implement it on their own book, and that gives me great joy, because then even if they do 20 copies, there are 20 libraries in the country that will have an additional braille book, and that is victory. Like, that is really great. Like, there's literally only one bookstore, commercial bookstore in the country that has a braille section, and that is Trilogy in Bombay. They have an entire braille section of books. So even if a visually impaired person walks in, he'll definitely have a few choices to pick up from. And that is the idea. We came up with a braille and tactile alphabet book called Tactibet. We used the polybraille technology in it. It's permanent braille technology that we used. Basically, it's done in Hindi and English both. So we have those books. Then in 2018, we decided to get into children's literature. And to address the idea of inclusion, we thought children are the best way of doing so, if you have to spread a message. So in 2018, we came up with a book called Look Out, Look Within. That was our first storybook. The storybook is available as print for the sighted, in braille for the visually impaired, sign language video on YouTube, and we also have an audiobook version of it. So as inclusive as one could get. And now finally, in the pandemic, adapting to the newer system, we came up with a ebook as well. It was called Flowers for Sunena. And so these are the products that we primarily sell. So this question usually comes to me, and the answer is a little brutally honest that why are we printing newspapers and why are we printing books in text when the sighted population also has access to the same audio and the same technology otherwise. I still prefer, and I know hundreds and thousands and lakhs of people and crores of people who still prefer a physical book in their hand, you know. And I have got this from the visually impaired community as well, that why they didn't get books, why they moved to only audio is because of a lack of books. As I said, if somebody were to read Braille books, they'd have to travel to that, either for instance in Bombay, they'll have to travel to NAB and go pick up their book and come. So yes, so much extra effort just to pick one book up. They can't sit on Amazon and order, or they cannot go to a bookstore around their vicinity and order. So people made lives difficult for the visually impaired by not providing enough content in Braille. So I feel like this question is a little irrelevant because we cannot compare the whole idea of holding a book in the hand. It needs to coexist. There can be audio, but there can be print as well, and there needs to be print to fill that gap. And that's why we've been so strong on this aspect that we are going to stick to creating Braille content, you know, because every additional issue is or every additional edition of the magazine adds to the Braille literature sort of path, because it's important. Like, no matter how difficult it is, it's important. It is my dream to have maybe a children's magazine, maybe to have, a sports magazine and regional content, lot of dreams, but Braille printing is very, very, very expensive. It's not as cheap as, a regular text print. So yeah, one day hopefully we'll have at least a few more variations. Yeah, I write a few articles myself. I have an associate editor who also writes a column each day, and I also, luckily, because authors and writers who are publishing elsewhere, and who are contributors elsewhere, they want to. They've never been published in Braille, so they really get excited with the idea of. So we have a lot of dietitians, a lot of environmental experts, etc., who want to write for us. And we do a lot of content collaboration. The most important point is that we have not been able to bring them into the mainstream, right? They're always looked at as a case of either celebration in terms of, oh, this person with visual impairment has cleared this exam with this result. Most of the articles that you will see online, you will find on this basis. So basically, we're only pleasing ourselves that how we have made someone who's visually impaired a hero out of just passing an exam. And I totally give credit to a child like that, because I know how much trouble the child would have gone through to get notes and books in the first place. But that shouldn't be the scenario, right? You should get your textbooks in time just as any other sighted child. So we even celebrate that. Basically, I feel like most people, because this whole charity perception exists in India with reference to PWDs, we are not able to shift from that perception. One of my biggest work, apart from creating these products, is talking and breaking myths in the society. Talking even to your social media audience that, hey, listen, use features that make your post more inclusive. We don't do that. Like, we don't want to take, like, your design when you're making a website, for instance. You need to make sure that it is an inclusive website, it's an accessible website. But who's talking about that? And the media will only focus on PWDs, either when there is a result that comes out, or they've passed an IAS exam, or I know in this pandemic there was only literally one or two articles about what are the difficulties or what are the challenges that are being faced by somebody who's visually impaired, for instance. Because touch is their only factor, which is very, very crucial. So how does one make sure your e-commerce apps are more accessible? How does one make sure your delivery apps are more accessible? talk to someone who's visually impaired, and you'll know that half of the apps, by the time you enter your address, it has gone back to the first page because the screen reader is not sort of able to pick up what the thing is saying. So there are so many difficulties, but nobody talks about it much, because you feel like this is not mainstream. Like, it's not even mainstream, and that is one of my biggest challenges. Like, for instance, when I used to go out for a talk, I have numerous times faced this thing. Oh, you're so young, why are you doing this? You don't have white hair. Like, we assumed you to be maybe an older woman, who is finished doing everything else in life and now has free time, so is doing this. So for me, it's very important to put this point out that social entrepreneurship, or talking about PWDs, is not only when you're retired, or is not only when you don't have anything else to do. Like, if I always tell, when I talk to younger audience and students, that if you have an idea that can solve an existing gap in the society, and that also lets you make money, then please go ahead with it. You don't need to feel bad. Like, I recently wrote a post on my social media about how social entrepreneurs are expected to do everything for free. you know yeah, can you please give us a guest lecture? Can you please come and talk to our students about it? Can you make a video about your life story? Why? you know Pay us for what we deserve. Because, and I think the minute you start talking about it, the minute people realize that we don't need to make this a very, like, I was invited on a show once, and they're like, we want a couple of visually impaired people around, and there can be a little emotional story involved. I said, why? There are stories that you can just celebrate as they are. Like, I have one of my readers who told me, half my life I keep wondering, why am I inspiring? I do the same things. I run around the stairs, I wash my clothes, I cook my food. Why is cooking food inspiring other people? It shouldn't inspire. It's just as simple as, I don't use my sight, I use my other senses. But we, as a population, we as a community, has failed to recognize that. We want to feel good. Oh, look, there was literally a school that came up to me and said, can you bring a few children who are visually impaired? We always tell our kids, look how lucky you are, you have sight. So I said, yeah, really, you want me to bring kids who are visually impaired and then make your kids feel good about it? That's not happening with me. So it's a deeper ingrained perception issue that the country is sort of battling, and people like us are talking about it. Like, the gadget that you spoke about, Project Annie, these are all young engineering students, who had come up with this project, and now look where they are. So there is younger blood that is realizing the need for doing this, and it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be in social entrepreneurship, because yes, it's challenging. I don't say that it's been easy to get funding, not at all. It's never been easy. I've not cut a salary for myself in the past 7 years. Whatever I've made, I've put into the company back again. But I think it's important, and maybe in a few years we'll get our due, and there will be more newspapers, there will be more magazines in Braille. But for now, I think we just have to stay put and keep at it.
So,
It has to be one step at a time. Like, for instance, there's a boy. His name is Viraj, in Bombay itself. He read the story of White Print, and he has a collection of poems that he wrote. And then he told his mother, I want to do this in Braille, and I want to distribute it wherever I go, whichever blind school. So he's literally taken the effort of going to NAB. This was a 15-year-old boy who did that. So these are little steps that are very important, because I know this student had become ambassador of inclusive content. He just had a book where he used to write, and he's like, I'll put this in Braille. He never said, I want to do it as a book and publish it for Sighted, but I want to do it in Braille, because he realized there isn't content in Braille. And then he also went on to taking workshops for the students of a school, blind school in Bombay. And then whichever, like, it's my duty to put it out that if you're an author, please, like, print 10 copies in Braille. We are not expecting you to say print 1,000 copies in Braille, not at all. Just print 10, start small. So I think these smaller steps, because, and I always tell people, if you think it's a PR story for you, like, oh, as an author, look, I'm publishing in Braille as well as in text, and it's getting you newspaper articles, so be it. Please do it, because it's a good story. It's a good story because it makes other people realize that, oh yeah, I could too print my book in Braille. And that has happened. Like, I've had about 3 to 4 authors who have done about 20 copies each in Braille, you know. And that is victory, because I feel like I'm not aiming for the stars and saying, tomorrow I want TOI, HT, Indian Express, everybody to print in Braille. I would love if they do. But if they are not, I think these smaller players, like, because I think at our level, what we can do, just inspire more people to be inclusive.